Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we are taking a look at the best hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel with the introduction of the Dominus cards more recently. I figured, hey, now is an okay time to revisit this tier list and more so talk about what cards are good and why they're good. So this is obviously for the current metagame in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel as well, and we have 4 tiers. We have mandatory, which basically says, hey, if you can play this card, play this card. That's just a must, right? We have good, we have situational, and then we have bad. It's pretty simple. Let's just run down the list. Starting off with Maxi. Maxi is mandatory. You basically have to play it. There are very few decks that don't want to play this and or don't play this. The only one that I can realistically think of off the top of my head is Paleo. Paleo's like the only one that realistically doesn't want to play this card in some capacity, and the only reason for that is because of the fact that you are playing Time-Tearing Morganite, which cuts off the access to this. You could also say Stun. Like a very dedicated stun deck also doesn't want to play this, but in reality, even then, you still see it see play. So there's that. And again, even in Paleo, you still see it. So it's Maxi. We all know it. I don't know why I talk so long about that. Next up, Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is basically mandatory because of the previous card, as well as some of the future cards on this list. Ash Blossom just takes care of Maxi, it takes care of a bunch of other cards as well. It's just one of the best hand traps in the current format, and it keeps you safe from other such powerful staples, which is pretty good. Spooky Dogwood is terrible, very bad, and not at all useful. There's no time rules in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, therefore, Dogwood, not very good. Gamma, I'm also going to put in situational. I think if you are also playing other other Psy-frames, there is a chance that it's worth it. Or like, you know, for example, if you're playing Psy-frames themselves, or if you're playing a deck that like can really utilize the extra monsters on the opponent's turn or something like that, right? For example, Labyrinth could, I think, realistically utilize Gamma. I don't think it's very worthwhile, but it's not bad, right? So I do think it's situational. I think it can come up, but not very often. Hanawata is bad. All right, let's talk about the Dominus cards. This is why you're here. This is why we're talking about them. Both of the Dominus cards are very good. However, they are technically situational, so I should theoretically put them in situational. But the thing is, they're only situational in what deck you want or can use them. Pretty much any deck that can use them is going to use them, right? Blue Eyes is going to use Purge, right? Labyrinth is going to use Impulse, right? Because just inherently, these cards are insanely valuable to have, both as hand traps and as cards that you can actually set as well. They generate a ton of advantage just because of the fact that, like, if you have another trap, you get to destroy the card as well, and a bunch of stuff like that. They are a great 1-for-1 trade in general, and it makes them very worthwhile. That being said, I don't think that they are mandatory in any deck, even if you can play them, right? In Labyrinth, you absolutely play Impulse, it's a mandatory card, but in, for example, Tearlament, right, you're probably not going to play Impulse. It's not very worthwhile, right? Both are decks that absolutely could take advantage of the effect and not really care about the downside of locking you out of specific types or attributes, right? Tearlament may have been a bad example because I believe Impulse locks you out of water, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember the exact attributes on each card, so my bad. But either way, the point is that, you know, say another deck that only uses dark monsters plays Impulse, it doesn't really matter because, you know, again, going back to Tearlament just might not care about having access to Impulse, right? Maybe they would really enjoy Purge, but, like, they can't really use Purge because it locks them out of dark monsters. You get the point. So, for the most part, I feel like they are very good, but more so situational. Maybe I should just put them in. No, they're really good. I think there's not a case in which you're like, oh, maybe I don't play this. I'm lying to you. It's just situational. What am I talking about? Anyway. Purple. Purple's not very good. Traps are not very good. There's not really a reason to play purple. Same thing with... where is it? Is it this one that negates traps? Or is this one... I think it's this one that negates traps. I don't remember which one. I remember them mostly off of the way that they look. But I believe this is the one that negates traps for the Psyframes. And I feel like it's just not very good. Delta, on the other hand, which I believe is this one. Let's move these. Delta, on the other hand, I believe is actually very good in certain situations. Being able to negate a spell is very useful. I think there's a lot of powerful spells as well. Like being able to negate Tract is not bad, right? You also have like the Azamina spell. You have the Blue Eyes spells. So there's a bunch of spells that's like worth utilizing this on. The problem is you're probably not going to utilize this unless it's like as a going second option, which makes it slightly worse. You're not really going to use it against like, I don't know, I guess you could use it against like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it's not terrible. I feel like it does have some use in the current metagame. Again, lots of really powerful spells, that being able to negate them is very nice. But alas, not insane and less useful than Gamma overall. But being able to pair them together makes it a little bit better. Ghost Mourner is actually not that great right now. I honestly kind of want to put it in bad. I just feel like there's not a reason to play this card because of the fact that targeted effect negation is not very good right now. Or more specifically, just like effect negation is not very good right now. This could hit a few things here and there. It's not bad, but I think there are much better cards right now. And even with that, most of the time, the reason you would play this card is as additional copies of Imperm and Valor, which I don't think are really all that impactful right now. Speaking of which, let's actually talk about these right now. While I do think Valor and Imperm are good, I don't think either of them are mandatory. And I feel like they are worthwhile options. I think less so Valor, but Imperm is still always a great option, mostly due to the fact that it plays around like Called By and Triple Tack and stuff like that. Similar in nature to the Dominus cards. However, with that being said, the priority of these cards goes down due to the fact that a lot of the combo pieces of, or not combo pieces, combo decks really can just push through this effortlessly. Snake Eye can push through this effortlessly. Blue Eyes doesn't really care too much. Like, they kind of do, but they have the ability to push through this fairly effectively, right? Whereas, like, Ash Blossom is very good against them. And there are a few other cards that I think are better and more worthwhile to currently be playing. So, there's that. I'll put Valor in good. I don't think it's as situational, but it's not as good as it used to be, basically. Next up, we have all three of the Bystials are on here, but we're just going to talk about Bystials in general. I think that they are good. Fiendsmith, insanely powerful. Blue Eyes also dies to, like, a Bystial. A bunch of other decks as well also are playing Lights and Darks. It's not a bad option. In fact, it is very good. And realistically, you can get away with playing any number of Bystials right now, and it's still fairly good, right? You could honestly play a deck that is more centered around Bystials than almost anything else as well, and it would still be fairly competent. Oh, did we talk about no material? No material is bad. There's not really a reason to use it. Sure, like, it prevents the opponent from using the monster that was targeted for the no material, but like that just doesn't do anything. It basically would only be used to pair with an additional card as opposed to stopping anything in particular. It would be something like, oh, I'm going to imperm and no material this thing so that they don't have the ability to like use it, which could be good, but at that point you could just imperm and like that does it, right? Theoretically. So there's that. If Link 1s didn't exist, this card would be so much worse. Skullmeister's not bad. I feel like it's very, very situational, but I do feel like there's a lot of situations where it could come up. Engraver, Flomberg, the Tenpai Synchros, and Blue Eyes with like Maiden. as well as even like Barrel from Primite. So like there are options to hit with Skullmeister. That being said, the problem with it is that it only hits those very specific cards, and it doesn't have much flexibility in the way that it's used. Oftentimes it is stopping something that's already kind of started rolling down the hill too much to stop it at that point, right? Sure, stopping an Engraver is nice, but at that point you could play like DD Crow, or you could play a Bystial, and that probably is just better, right? So, not great. This one is a card that I do not remember the effect of because it has never come up and I've never had to read it. I'm going to put it in bad. If someone could explain to me what the situation is that you would ever use this, that would be great, but I genuinely can't think of one. I don't know what this card is. I just straight up don't know it. So I'm not going to judge it. While I haven't seen it, unlike this one I have read the effect of, and I remember it being bad. This one, I just genuinely don't know. So I'm just not gonna talk about that one. Fuel loss. Fuel loss is basically mandatory, mostly due to the fact that being able to, or like having a format that is a best of one means that you are going to go second fairly consistently. And with that in mind, a lot of decks, especially right now, kind of just lose to fuel loss resolving. Not entirely, but they really heavily hinder the amount of plays that are available because of the Fuel loss, just drawing you an insane amount of cards. So for the most part, Fuel loss is extremely important, just entirely invalidating turns and more or less being a turn skip. It doesn't always happen that way, but there are also a bunch of decks that can utilize the level 4 body, or utilize the fact that it is a wind or a winged beast or something else of that nature, and because you're playing a whole bunch more hand traps, being able to see those additional hand traps makes it a lot better. It's a metagame full of hand traps. Being able to see them, pretty good. Karibo's funny. Swift Scarecrow is also just like very bad right now. Stopping a battle phase is not good, because if you cannot put board presence onto the board and, you know, actually deal with an opponent's board, passing for a turn isn't going to help. Contact C, that's it. This one is... No, this is the one with the spell, right? Like a spell... I don't remember. I don't remember exactly which one. I believe Contact is if a spell is activated that special summons a monster, you can special summon this and then they have to use that material. This one is the Macrocosmos. You special summon it to your field, then if it's dealt with, you can like search up Maxi. Both of which are situational. I don't think both of them, either of them are very worthwhile currently. Just not as many cards that trigger their effects to then hinder the opponent. Azamina is not as popular as it used to be, so this card just has fallen off. That being said, it still has merit in like being played. You could play it in like insects, and I think it would be fairly decent just due to the fact that you could not just search the Maxi, but you could also search potentially other starters and stuff like that, which makes it a little bit better. But other than that, I don't really see a reason for either of these. Winter Cherries. I'm not gonna lie, if you could play Winter Cherries, it's probably very useful, right? For example, if you're playing Labyrinth and you don't need your extra deck, or like you don't need all of the cards in your extra deck, like for example, you're not playing the what's it in the extra? I guess you could use it as a way to like, you could put specific fusion and Xyz in your extra to pair with Simultaneous Equation Cannon, or you could just forego playing Simultaneous Equation Cannon in something like Labyrinth, and then just Winter Cherries the opponent's extra deck, and be like, hey, nice Spirit with Eyes of Blue, it'd be a shame if it just disappeared. Or like, hey, nice Requiem's a bad example. Nice Sequence, it'd be a shame if that card existed. You know, and the list goes on, where it's just like, just get rid of these very high power cards and having the ability to just forego playing them, but like having them in the extra is not bad. Lancia is just not very good right now. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. There's not really a deck that would care about Lancia, I think, at all. Yep. Green Herald. I'm not even gonna put it in situational. Here's the thing: if you have a deck that has the ability to play any of the heralds, you are not playing green. you're playing orange. Orange is the only one that's playable right now. Mostly due to the fact that, yes, spells are not bad. They're not insane. Monster effects are way better still, right? So while, like, Delta is useful because there are power spells you can hit with it, it's only useful because you can pair it with Gamma. If you didn't have the ability to also play the Gamma alongside Delta, there's, like, no reason to do that. And that's kind of the reason why green doesn't really make sense. Like, technically you pair them together, but realistically, if you're playing a deck that plays the fairies, that has the ability to play the negates, you're just going to play orange to play around, like, Maxi and Fool Loss and stuff like that. Like, that's the main reason to use them. Droll. Droll, I think, is a mandatory card at this juncture. Here's why. Twofold. One, Fool Loss, Maxi, Perulia, all of which are very, very impactful to pretty much every deck right now. And a lot of decks has the ability to play under their own Droll to prevent the opponent from drawing a whole bunch of cards off of that. Right? And two, more important, a lot of decks, and most notably the most popular deck currently, dies to Droll. And that is Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes, the deck, does not play well into Droll in any capacity. Here's why. Normal Summon Barrel, search a card, Droll. Activate Wishes, search a card, Droll. Sage, search a card, Droll. All of which ends the turn. There is very, very little that they can do from that point, unless they just have hard drawn a lot of the cards that they need, like Roar or like the Field Spell, which are oftentimes one-ofs, where it just kind of ends the turn. Prevents them from really getting off to the races. Unless they hard draw all of those cards, which they won't, it ends the turn. It's fantastic. The second thing is it also stops Snake Eye, Azamina, White Forest, Fiendsmith, etc. Right? Fiendsmith Engraver discarding to add Tract, Droll, can't grab Lurie. Tragic. Now they can't really do anything with that. They could, but they might not. Right? Etc. Etc. Right? There's a ton of decks that are really heavily slowed down by Droll, and it protects you. There are very, very few decks in which I would say you do not want to play Droll. Make sense? Makes sense. Second up, Nibiru. Nibiru I'm going to put into mandatory. I think Nibiru holds a similar spot to Droll. It stops a lot of the current meta decks. However, the problem is, it's much less advantageous to play it in a format where everyone is playing Azamina. Everyone has jumped ship from Azamina and is now playing Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes gets absolutely shredded by Nibiru. And with the insane amount of draw cards that are also available to us, you can just Nibiru the opponent's board after drawing into it. Cool. But Nibiru absolutely demolishes Blue Eyes. And Blue Eyes is everywhere. So, yeah, play Nibiru, play Droll, and just absolutely demolish the opponent's board. Just act like it just doesn't exist. Oh, nice end board. Here's a rock. What are you going to do about it? Stare at me? The thing is, there is one end board that technically could, in theory, deal with Nibiru from Blue Eyes, specifically. And it is where they end on seals. Or, sorry, seal. The heavenly spheres. And the thing is, that only kind of helps, because it allows them to potentially continue going from Nibiru. You know, you could potentially put, like, a Blue Eyes on field for your Drill Beam so that you have Drill Beam life. But realistically, the amount of stuff that is possible to do after getting Nibiru'd in Blue Eyes is negligible. So it's really, really good right now. Next up, Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre, I'm going to put in good. Lots of cards. Azamina, Continuous Spell, True Light, what else is there? A bunch of field spells and stuff like that that activate, or continuous spells. There's a few cards around the current metagame, like The Fire King Island. That was what I was thinking of. That was the other one. That one's also decent. It's a fairly decent option, all things considered. Also, being able to, like, pop a monster is not bad right now. Just given the fact that, like, monsters, like, any amount of monsters on the field can convert into, like, almost anything. So being able to deal with that is very nice. So, yeah, overall, very solid. Why is Baldric in there? Shifter. If you can play Shifter, you absolutely will play Shifter, even though it's at 1, because it's an insanely powerful card and basically just immediately wins the game when it resolves. Smile. Phantasme, I think, is actually... it's okay. I think there's a lot of decks that can make use of the Phantasme draws, but for the most part, it's not insane. It just has the ability to also, like, almost hit every deck right now. Like, almost every deck goes into some sort of Link monster, besides maybe, like, Memento right now. But, yeah, pretty much everything else does, and so being able to draw cards is very nice. Then we have Crow. Crow, I think, is also fairly good right now, but not insane. That's pretty much it. The only reason to play this would be in order to deal with, like, non-light and or dark monsters, where, like, a Bystial would help, or to deal with, like, spells and traps, which there just aren't that many right now. Perulia is pretty good. I think you should probably play it. Not every deck has space to play Perulia, but it is very worthwhile to play. Next up, we have Ghost Bell. Ghost Bell is situational. I don't think a lot of decks can really utilize it. Actually, it's more so that most decks don't have... Like, Ghost Bell doesn't hit a lot of decks right now. It can, similar in nature to, like, Skullmeister, but you're also kind of better off not trying to trade 1-for-1 with those decks, because either you have to drop, like, 4 to 5 Handtraps on them, which not a lot of decks can do, or you could just drop, like, potential Haymakers, right? Like, you know, these 4. Right? I guess technically these 5. Ash is kind of at the bottom. Ash is basically in here because it deals with these 2. That's more or less why it's in here. Right? But, like, these 4, I think, are really, really solid right now. Being able to actually, like, end turns, which is very advantageous and something that you're generally trying to do. Right? So, for the most part, I feel like that is more or less what the tier list looks like. Right? Yeah, that's pretty much it. That being said, I know that the Dominus cards, I just want to really quickly state this. I know that the Dominus cards are in situational. The only reason for that is because they're not playable in every deck. If they were playable in every deck, they would be mandatory cards. They are absolutely insane. They're, like, way stronger than almost any other card currently in the game. They're, like, Ash Blossom level powerful. And paired with things like Imperm or other Dominus cards, they're extremely impactful and just genuinely good. The problem is, that's not how that works, right? They are, in fact, restrictive in the way that they work because of that very nature. If they were being able to be paired together, they'd be quite insane. So, yeah, there you go. That's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I'd like to very much appreciate it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.